Shadow of the Tomb Raider. You're a complicated one, aren't you? You've got some imperfections, some ups and some downs, but it was hard not to fall in love with you by the end. As a primer, I would say there are generally two camps of gamers out there, story gamers and gameplay gamers. I believe this is the primary distinction between who will love this game and who won't, so keep that in mind during this review. You can certainly be a little bit of both, but I'm a sucker for storytelling when done right, so I fall into the category of the former, which is why I can forgive the game its flaws. My favorite games are my favorites because of the stories they tell. Shooters come and go, they entertain you until the next one drops, then they're gone. Stories stick with you, and I think this one will. And while the story does have its hiccups and inconsistencies, it hit me harder than either of the other two games in the series by far, in the best way. One of the major problems I have with the series is the pacing. The games have seemingly made a habit of giving the player a high, only for the excitement and tension to frustratingly fizzle out immediately after, repeating this process throughout the game. These few moments were very well done and definitely stood apart from the rest of the experience, but I found myself frustrated afterwards, wanting the game to keep that pace. Another issue I have with the series is its tendency to try to make the story more complete by adding supplemental characters into the mix, when I really only find myself caring about Lara. This is her story. I don't care about Jonah. His presence is redundant to me, even annoying at times. Don't get me wrong, there are certainly characters I became attached to besides Lara, but there were few. The story on the whole, however, I praise. Although the plot does start off slowly, the final third and the ending in particular really got its hooks into me. Things really fall into place by the end, and I left the experience feeling very satisfied. I won't spoil things for anyone, but if you're one to get emotionally invested in games, the ending will hit you hard. Visually, the game is stunning, and I don't use the term loosely. I could have used almost virtually any environment for this review as a showcase. This is how consistently brilliant the game looks. From the darkest to dustiest crypt, to the gorgeous crystal pools of water, to a jagged mountainside, to a stretch of Peruvian jungle, the game is a work of art. The vibrant colors and incredible lighting will have you stopping to stare. I can't praise the scenery enough. The artists have produced an exceptionally beautiful game. I was also impressed by the level of detail in some of the faces during cutscenes. Some very human, nuanced expressions were created by the motion capture, which really added to the weight of the story for me. Curiously, however, the game does have a bit of a visual problem. There are two visual modes, one which provides a locked frame rate, and another that provides slightly improved visuals at the cost of frame rate. I played on PlayStation 4 Pro, but noticed an obvious dip in performance when opting for the better visuals, so I stuck with the improved frame rate. The game's audio, while not as noticeably impressive as the visuals, is well done also. The story calls for some pretty intense delivery for the voice lines, and actors don't fail to deliver. I was, for the most part, really pleased with the performances. It was jarring having so many of the lines delivered in English, however, as the bulk of the game takes place in Peru, among a tribe of people who know nothing of the outside world. I would have liked for the locals to speak their native tongue instead, even if it meant reading subtitles. It would have been nice hearing Lara speak the same language as well. She's educated, so it would have made sense. I wasn't impressed with the guns, however, as when you shoot a target, the audio design lacks repercussions for it. The bow sounds great, as always, however, it's simply not satisfying to shoot a target with nearly anything else. It feels almost as if the bullets pass right through them. Mechanically, I have a split opinion on the game. On some ends, the game feels great. The bow has been my favorite weapon since the first game and feels very satisfying to achieve headshots with. However, most of the other guns simply don't feel right. It isn't that they are particularly bad, however. When you fire them, it simply lacks consequence. They don't feel clean and right, they feel unfinished. As well, I feel as though the guns even ruin combat for me. It makes the brief encounters you have throughout the game feel distinctly less satisfying. 2 headshots from any gun takes down the toughest enemy and robs the game of its difficulty. I found myself using the bow almost exclusively even when things got tough because it simply felt better. In fact, one of my favorite parts is when you lose all of your weapons except for your knife and you have to quietly eliminate enemies from the shadows. The enemies, as always, are not particularly well designed. Sometimes they seemingly spot you through objects, while other times you will literally knife someone in the middle of their conversation with someone, and the surrounding enemies will be none the wiser. Another issue I have with the game is its lack of combat. I understand the game's focus on puzzles, but I felt more combat would have made the game more compelling, especially since enemies are so quickly dispatched and so infrequently seen. This does improve in later parts of the game, however I was left wanting more. The puzzles themselves weren't terribly difficult for the most part, although some did leave me frustrated because of a lack of explanation on the game's part. I felt a few puzzles expected you to know particular pieces of information and operated as if you had known while throwing you for a loop. Some might find this par for the course, as these are puzzles, but I felt the experience was a bit inconsistent with its expectations of the player. All in all, I left the game very pleased. However, I could understand why others would take issue with it, so I would rate this game a rent. If you're a fan of the Tomb Raider series, however, I think it's worth a buy. I hope you found my review helpful and informative. As always, if you did like the video and you would like to support me, the best way to do that on YouTube is by subscribing for more content as well as liking the video. If you have any feedback for me, whether it's how I can improve my videos or a game you'd like to see played or reviewed, please leave a comment below for me to read. Keep an eye out for my continuation of my Hitman Blood Money series, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon with more content.